Test. Test, 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 test.
Welcome to the .NET Community Austria December edition presented by .NET Devs. Here are the links where you find us on the different platforms. So first of all, thanks for joining everybody. Thanks for joining online. And yeah, you're welcome. I hope you have a nice day and a nice talk today. Also, thank you to my employer, the company TechTalk, where Andy, Willich, and I working. So thank you for the rooms today, for the pizza and beer. Thank you, and for the room hosting and everything else. So also thank you to our other sponsors, T2Every, Rubicon, and JetBrains. I think we have a JetBrains raffle at the end. Yeah, we have a raffle. So when you type in the chat online, hash JetBrains in the chat, then you are able to win one license of a JetBrains product. I think we also raffle one in the room at the end. So next, the next meetups are on 23rd January from Paul Rohotzka at Square and David Walter. So functional development in C# at Square. Then in February we will host also here at TechTalk Andreas Willich, Copilots Help for Development. So we will have a small look at GitHub Copilot and other copilots. In March we have the topic building a 1 versus 1 multiplayer game with Unity and .NET in person, and we don't have currently a location for it. And in April, we have Bas Tritzka, I hope I pronounced it well, with contract testing, also no location currently. And so I will hand over to Christian for high performance logging in .NET. Thank you.
All right. Audio looks good. Okay. Hello and welcome to my talk about high performance logging in .NET. I want to give you a quick intro about myself so you know what you're dealing with for about the next hour. I don't know how this goes away. Just going to put it somewhere. Left icon. Ah, wonderful. Okay. My name is Christian. That's a picture of me. So you can already see I'm very good at graphical stuff. I'm not. I'm also not very good at CSS. That's the reason why the icons are not perfectly aligned here. And it absolutely bugs me. It probably took me more time to draw those 2 red lines vertically there instead of fixing it. But well, that's me. Sometimes I'm lazy. I'm the world's okayest developer. I'm coming from Linz, Upper Austria, and I'm a freelancer, which is just a fancy code word for I will do everything for money. So I'm a .NET developer, a little bit of a tech lead at the moment, and this is my Mastodon handle in case you want to get to contact with me if you have questions about the talk or if you want more infos. So yeah, feel free to write me there or grab a beer later, of course. Let's talk about logging. So why is high performance or performance in general for logging important? I did a dot trace last week of one or services or application, found 2 things in there. One was database queries, the second one was logging. My question is, who of you have written a line like this? Raise your hand. If you're not raising your hand, I have to assume you never did logging at all. That would worry me even more. So yeah, everyone. That's how we started. Everyone, string interpolation. String interpolation is awesome, except for when it isn't. And in fact, that is happening when we're talking about logging. Because what happens here? We're allocating a new string each and every time because we're building a new string each and every time when we write this log statement. And it's of course depends on where it's in your application. Could be on a hot path, executed 1,000 times in a second. Could be on not hot path, cold path, where it's not executed so much. But the fact is we're creating a new string each and every time we log this. In fact, this was even worse before .NET 6, because before .NET 6, it was just using string concatenation. Since .NET 6, it's now using string builder automatically behind. So it's more performant, it's better, but it's still, we are allocating a new string each and every time. And strings, of course, go onto the heap, and everything that goes onto the heap needs to be garbage collected. And garbage collection is expensive. For a very simple reason, it suspends all your threads, collects all the unused variables which you don't need anymore, and we are very thankful for that, because otherwise we would need to deal with pointers or something else. So garbage collector is this nice magic black box that just does all these things automatically for you. But yeah, it needs to suspend the threads, collect everything, and then resumes all those threads. So maybe another approach, string.format style. Pretty sure everyone of you have seen that. So instead of creating new strings here, we're adding them as a parameter at the end, and they get automatically replaced when we log this stuff. Let's make you happy. Yeah. And it, of course, enables us to do structured logging, and we will take a look at that later. Let's just make you happy. Let's check the method definition. So this is the method definition of this log information extension method, which we have from the Microsoft extensions logging package. It goes onto the logger interface. We have a string message, and then params object, the arguments we want to put in there. There are two errors with this. One is personal and one is performance-wise. The first one is it's called message. Me, that's a message template. We have placeholders in there. So maybe message template would be a better name, but that's just Microsoft, bad at naming things or renaming things all the time. So yeah, we have to deal with that. The second one is performance related. And it's this last parameter here, object type. What do we usually log? IDs. Can be integer, can be long, can be GUID. Sometimes we have date times, warranty activated. We could have enums to predict, to log which flow it picked, for example. And yes, sometimes we log strings, but it doesn't happen that much. The first three have all, one thing in common. It's their value types. And if you put them into an object, they get boxed. And boxed value types go onto the heap. And yes, you guessed it, we have garbage collection again. So even for this little statement here, now looks somewhat innocent because it's using string.format. We're not allocating new strings. Well, it's still allocating something for my GUID variable I have there, even though it would be a value type. So even that is like not that good. And the thing is, there would even be a warning for that in .NET. It's the CA 1848, use the logger message delegates. And when I first saw this one, I was like, okay, what is that? I've never seen that. In fact, we were starting out in a new Greenfield project, and we just looked for best practices and copied our editor config file we found online and adapted it a little bit, and somehow this warning got activated. It's not activated by default, but you can activate it with your editor config file or with your CS project file. And so I was there, like asking myself, okay, what is this? So I clicked on this magic link here because it's nice. It opens the Microsoft documentation. And I don't have a screenshot of that page, but page 404 not found. So it took Microsoft, I think, 1 or 2 years to provide documentation for that one. Fortunately, there were a lot of people on the internet providing tutorials, blog articles on how to do this. And this was really cool because it showed me why this is such a big problem. I mean, this warning triggered me, but of course, all the blog posts helped me solve my performance problems there. So let's take a look at how to do high performance logging in .NET. So when we first introduced it, so you basically have this logger message.define here. You have generic parameters where you can add the types of all the parameters you have for a log statement. In this case, it's just this one GUID. Then you define the log level, of course. You can put the event ID in there. And then you have the message template, which is still called message there. Yeah. And it returns you an action on the iLogger for iLogger, because that's where you need to execute it. Of course, we need to put it onto the logger. Then we have the GUID and also a nullable exception in case you're doing like error logging that will also be available. Of course, this is not very nice to use, but we save it in a private static variable because then it only gets allocated once for the whole runtime when you actually start and use your application or run your application. So we define an extension method on the iLogger interface for convenience reasons, so we can easily use it. We put the parameters in there, and then we can use that one. And of course, exception, we don't need that. So, or we don't need that in this case. So we just put default there. Does this make you happy? No. Or is he shaking heads? Yeah. This is an awful lot of boilerplate code for logging one line. And Microsoft realized they made a mistake. And they didn't. They tried to make things better, but they realized that this is not really a suitable approach for everyday business stuff. So they built something better. I think it was in .NET 5 or .NET 6 when they invented source code generation. And they saw, okay, we need to improve the whole logging situation, because what we saw previously, that is not very much user-friendly and doesn't have a good developer experience. So they implemented this logger message attribute here. And it works a little bit different. So you now define partial classes. You also define partial methods. But the good thing is you don't need all this action stuff anymore. You could just define your method on the iLogger interface with all the parameters you have. And then you define the attribute on top of it with your message template and the level and the event ID if you want to have something like that. And this is a lot better, because this is now, okay, it's for a 5 line of code, still a lot, but it's also because I formatted it in this way. You could put it on 2 lines of code. Yes, it's still, of course, a little bit overhead, but I guess it's a lot better than the last one. And later we will see in the benchmark how this is comparing to the other one. So yeah, let's quickly check the generated code, because the generated code is still mostly the same. We still have the system.action here. It still has the iLogger interface, the system.GUID, which you can't see here anymore. It's still calling the logger message.define, and it just implements you the partial method we are having here. It adds one additional check that wasn't there previously, which is logger.isEnabled, and it checks for the log level. I skipped it in the previous one because the previous one is mostly out from the Microsoft documentation. But this is a further performance improvement, because if the logger is not activated for your log level, then why call it? So we can skip that, which is even saves a couple of more nanoseconds, milliseconds, whatever. But enough talking about high performance. Let's actually show it. So this is a small little benchmark I brought with me. I'm going to start it now and then keep talking, because it takes a couple of minutes to actually finish. So I will talk a little bit about benchmarking in general. Who of you is still using a stopwatch for testing your performance? Nobody? Yes, one. Okay. Try benchmark.net. It's open source. It's part of the .NET Foundation. It's a really awesome framework to do proper benchmarking. Of course, stopwatch still works. If you want to include it in your application, then stopwatch is absolutely fine. But if you try to do real benchmarking between 2 or multiple different ways on how to do things, then a proper benchmarking framework might be the better approach. It's pretty easy to use. You get a benchmark runner, and you just provide the benchmark you want to execute. And this is the benchmark itself. I'm just setting some things up. So for the a logger factory and a logger, because we will need that, of course, so we can do that. And then I created a lot of benchmarks. One, we're doing string interpolation here. One, also one where this, the log message actually gets logged, and one where it doesn't get logged. Same thing with the string.format structured logging approach. Then the same thing with the manually typed logger message.define. And the last one is the auto-generated one with the source code generator. Right. One thing I needed to provide here is a fake logger provider, because we don't want to test out, benchmark the whole logging stuff around it. We don't want to write to the console or to a file. It's all IO throttle. We don't want to test that one. We want to test on what's happening just right in C#, right in .NET, on how performant the logging calls are. So yeah, I needed to provide my own logger provider that just creates my own fake logger, and the fake logger doesn't do much except for implementing this isEnabled. We already saw it in the in the source code generator, that if the log level is not enabled, we will just skip it. So everything that is information or higher will get logged. So that's always the benchmark that gets logged, and everything that is below, so all the debug statements, will not get logged in this case. Right. So I was hoping that the benchmark would be a little bit faster. So I guess I have to continue talking about benchmarking. So there's this nice memory diagnoser attribute, which I can really recommend because it shows you all the garbage collection that is happening in your benchmark. So it will show you how much memory you allocated and also how much time you spend, for example, in Gen 0 activity in your garbage collector. You can do global cleanups at the end. So the factory, of course, is iDisposable. So we want to clean that up properly at the end. And I think I'm now really run out of things to tell you. So we need to wait. Of course, I created my variable here as a private member variable and not as part of my benchmark because I don't want to test the GUID.new GUID. I want to know how fast the logging stuff is. So those are things we need to take care of a little bit. So that's the benchmark result here. I hope you can read it. And we can see that all this logger, the lower four ones, these are the high performance one. So we have a baseline here of 1. This is the generated one, the auto-generated one from the source code generator. And we can see that, for example, interpolated string is about 2.5 times slower. Structured logging still around 2 times slower. If you check out the timing here from the nanoseconds point of view, it isn't that much. And there's a reason for that. I'm on a ARM M2 CPU here. So this is typically not the CPU where you will run your services on. So the benchmark we're seeing here is vastly different from what you most likely will see in your service. We will check out the slides that did the same benchmark on a Windows x64 machine, and the results are quite different. Same thing we see on both benchmarks is definitely the part here. We have Gen 0 activity and we have some allocated memory. For the interpolated string one, of course, but as said, also for the structured logging, the string.format style approach, because we have our boxed value type versus our GUID, because it's 64 bytes, which is not that memory, but 1,000 log statements per second on a hot path, that can sum up, especially with Gen 0 activity in the end. So right, as said, benchmark on Windows or on a x64 CPU architecture might be way more interesting simply because that's usually what you have on your servers. And you can see that the results are already quite different. The interpolated string one took over 100 nanoseconds. That one can really sum up in the end. The lower ones are a little bit slower than on the ARM M2 CPU I'm having here. We can also see that this is still .NET 7, where I originally wrote this talk. We're still .NET 7. The benchmark you saw like a second ago was already in .NET 8. I also did the same benchmark now on .NET 8, also on x64. We can see that .NET 8 in general improved a lot performance-wise. So really good. If you haven't upgraded, just upgrade it. Gives you a lot of free performance optimization, and it's blazingly fast. But yeah, a lot of difference between an ARM CPU and x64 CPU. All right, let's talk about some pitfalls regarding high performance logging, because there are some official constraints. You will find them in the Microsoft documentation here, which you can't do. You need to have partial, you can't use underscores and all that kind of stuff. You can read that in the documentation. That's boring. Let's talk about the stuff that is not in the documentation. And the first thing is that you can't use the destruct formatter. Have you ever heard of the destruct formatter? No? No wonder it's also not in the documentation. But it's there, it works. It destructs objects and basically serializes them as a JSON and just writes them out into your log message, which is really cool in case something like this where you have an unhandled exception handler and where you want to log out the whole request object you might have. It doesn't work with it. So you need to put the @ sign in there if you want to use the destruct formatter, and the logger message attribute will just tell you, it will give you an error that it can't match with the parameter. It can also not match even if you add the @ sign there to the variable name, which is totally allowed in C#. it just can't do it. So the thing to avoid this one is you still need to use this boilerplate thing of logger message.define. The second thing that's also not covered yet, I haven't created a GitHub issue, but feel free to do so. It doesn't support scopes. So there is no logger scope attribute in the Microsoft extensions logging package. So for that one, you again need to use this big boilerplate code of thing to define scopes. It's a little bit different. You have define scope now instead of just define, and it also will return a func instead of an action because, of course, it's a scope. It will return an idisposable, and of course, we need to dispose the scope as soon as we do not need it anymore. Yeah. Right. So I brought you a second quick demo regarding structured logging. And I'm going to show you also a little bit of OpenTelemetry. Who's using OpenTelemetry already? Oh, yeah, quite a few people. Very nice. So for those who are not familiar with it, it's not only a specified standardized protocol. They also bring with their own SDK to do stuff the way they see to do it, or they want to do it. And it's basically a generalized approach for metrics, traces, and also logging so you don't need, like usually in the past you had like a logging library like nlog, serilog, and then depending on your log analytics software which you wanted to use, you had 5 different NuGet packages to use. You don't need that anymore. We have only one now, and this is the export of the OpenTelemetry protocol. So that's a really nice thing. And I just set up a basic ASP.NET Core application here. And I'm using also a log analytics tool so we can see the benefits of structured logging. And the nice part is this whole thing is the configuration for that, for the OpenTelemetry part. I didn't change the single character in there. I copied that out of a documentation. It worked out of the box, even the connection string for localhost. This is really awesome. So it's really easy to set up and to use. And basically what I did, I brought a controller with different endpoints that logs different things. One with string interpolation, one high performance one, one scope one. We will see those in a second. And then of course, just the logger extension for our high performance logging. So we're gonna start that one now. Wonderful. And this is over here. Where is it? Nope. That one, right. Wonderful. So this is my log analytics tool. It's called SAC. You can just run it as a Docker container locally on your local machine. It's really awesome. It's I'm not sure if it's open source, but it's definitely free for like personal use, like just spin it up locally. If you want to use it in a professional like company way business, then you need to pay for it, but it's self-hosted on-premise. I already heard some on-premise stuff people talking about before, so that is really cool. And I think it's a really good logging tool especially for local experiments or local development. So we're going to just execute that one. And we go over to SAC. So this is our log statement now. Very nice. And now we're going to call the high performance one, which also has the structured logging enabled, of course. So, and now we will see 2 log messages here. And there's a big difference between those log messages. Not really, it look mostly the same, except for the second log message has a vehicle attribute here. So that means in my log analytics tool, I can filter for a vehicle ID, which is exactly like this, and it will spill out exactly all the log statements that are attached to it. You will now see, of course, yeah, but we can just copy that one here. Oh, sorry. That ID here. And we filter for it. And I didn't get the full one. And it will also find it. Yes, it will find it, but it's using full text search, of course. So it's really nice that you can actually filter for specific attributes which you want to filter for you, so you're not depending on any kind of, well, message format. And you especially see this when you use scopes, because with scopes you can just attach this kind of attributes to like a long list or basically to a lot of log statements. And if we go back that one returned a GUID. And we now can, for example, filter here for the order ID, which I know that exists because I have wrote that thing, and I could just filter for the order ID, and I wouldn't be able to do a full text search one. So that is really nice. In case you have never done structured logging or used such kind of log analytics tools, I can highly recommend it. It's a lot better than using handling old classical log files. Right. So we have some time left. Therefore, I brought you additional thing. Wouldn't it be cool if, usually when you hear this kind of sentence, it's coming from some kind of business person who wants some fancy feature that you as a developer are totally not able to implement because it's impossible. So usually when you hear the sentence, start running. Today I'm gonna be the one, and I say, wouldn't it be cool if we could do string interpolation with structured logging? And technology-wise, I think, yeah, this might be a pretty cool thing. Performance-wise, most likely not, or maybe, we will see. So yeah, most likely do not do this, what I will show you now, but we're gonna show it anyway, of course. So I've already mentioned before that string interpolation changed a little bit with .NET 6. So before it was using string concatenation. Nowadays it's using a string builder, which is of course a lot more performant. And they implemented it in a very modular way. Apparently Microsoft in general tries, so if they add something new to .NET, they try to make it modular, try to make it replaceable. And that's exactly what it did. So they implemented this default interpolated string handler, which already the name suggests it's default, so you definitely can replace it. And they added this interpolated string handler attribute. And with some other magic that was recently added in C#, you can build your own interpolated string handler, which is a public ref struct. You add this attribute on top there. There's no interface whatsoever. You just need to know what you need to implement, which is an append format method that will get called for basically for the string builder when you append something to the string builder there. And with the call argument expression, you could get the variable name of the variable that was put in as a parameter, and then you can save it in some kind of fancy list. And then, of course, you could define some extension method on the iLogger interface again with log information. You put in the ref and your own implemented interpolated string handler, and you do that log information stuff. And I said we shouldn't do that because we're allocating objects again with box value types. We're not checking yet for the log level, and probably a lot more stuff is going on there which I did wrong, which we absolutely shouldn't do in production. However, there are people out there who already built a sophisticated solution, so I stopped, as I threw mine away basically. And another thing is called ISLE. It stands for Interpolated Logging Extensions, open source on GitHub there. It's not that much active, so maybe again still do not use it in your application, but I find the concept behind it very interesting. You can check out the implementation and maybe you can gain some insights from it. So it's pretty easy. You just need to add the package reference. You need to call the global configuration thing once because they developed it like that, and it will automatically replace all your existing log information, log error, log debug stuff, whatever is there, because that's how the whole interpolated string handler basically works. Because if there is something more specific with your string handler instead of just using string, then it will automatically pick that one. So package reference is basically enough, but they said, okay, you also need to call your configuration because they have some configuration stuff. It's time for benchmark again. And I just didn't show it to you, but the benchmark, in fact, included 2 more benchmarks down there. And we can already see, well, in the case where log message gets actually logged, this is even worse than the interpolated string one we had. Of course, we have memory allocations again, even for it's less memory than for default interpolated string. That surprised me a little bit, but yeah. So of course, Gen 0 activity, but we're about 3.3 times slower than the high performance one. However, the case where it doesn't get logged, it's surprisingly fast. In this run now, it's even the fastest of all the benchmarks I'm having here. So yeah, that really surprised me because this gives us some nice idea, which we will talk about in a second. Okay, same benchmark, .NET 8 on a x64 machine again, because that's where we are running our stuff, of course. And we can see that, of course, again, the ISLE is about 110 nanoseconds slow. It's way worse than the interpolated string one. But again, the not locked version is about 3.2 nanoseconds. So it's about the same as our high performance logging, which we implemented before. So yeah, conclusion to that library. You need to be careful. It can be used wrong, because with string interpolation, you can do a lot more than just putting in variables. You could, for example, do calculations 1 plus 1. Doesn't have a variable name, so the caller argument expression we were using wouldn't work. We also saw that not locked messages are surprisingly fast, and we also saw that we shouldn't be using it for any log messages we want actually log in our production system. However, it could maybe be used for log debug and log trace only, because for it, let's be honest, even with the source code generator, it's still a little bit of a hassle to write your log statements. So if you're doing like good logging and putting a lot of debug and trace statements in there, high performance logging will be pretty damn annoying for you. So this could be a way to work around this problem, because on production, we don't log debug and trace. So it would be surprisingly fast, and well, it could work out like really well. It would save you a lot of boilerplate code, and you said you basically just need to add the package reference and call this the statements, this configuration statement once, and that should be about it. So yeah, I guess this is a suitable approach. Maybe, however, do not get too smart with the tooling. You know, if you start introducing this one, you will find an intern that will also use it for log information. Okay, a little bit of closing. It's very short. Use high performance logging from my point of view. I don't think that it's premature optimization. I think it's free optimization, because you can do it very easily for log information, log error stuff. For debug traces, I already told you, it might be a little bit of overkill, but we saw it in the benchmark. If you're using the normal one, they are pretty damn slow. So I would not suggest to use it if you're really looking for performance. And yes, if you can, of course, use the logger message attribute with the source code generator. It saves you a lot of boilerplate code, which you do not need to write on your own then. Right, we're basically at the end. This is my usual learn more slide. I will try to send the slides to the organization team, so maybe we can distribute them or give the people here access to them. But basically, it's some links to some Microsoft documentation and some blog posts which are used to prepare this talk. If you just Google for it, you will find them too. Right, that's the last slide. Any questions? Yes, I think we need the microphone there, right?
Okay, thanks. Question, did you already have a chance to check out the new method interceptor infrastructure Microsoft built?
No, not really. I've read about it. Found some very nice ideas. So yes, you could maybe utilize that one too. But no, I haven't really checked it out.
Okay. So basically, the big picture is, and I hope Microsoft is going to do this themselves, since you can apparently intercept invocation instances, you would no longer need to have the template methods generated. You can have the string interpolation generated directly from the log statements and say, okay, here I'm logging hello world, and it generates the necessary define message, etc. stuff for hello world in line where it is used.
Yeah, I could see that one working. But I guess it's not there. It's just like concept, right?
It's in the preview feature, so you
Preview,
can use
okay.
it. They are just not committing to it that it will exactly stay that way. It only works for methods right now, not CTORs, not properties. But unless they decide this feature isn't viable, it's going to happen in this shape or something similar.
Oh, very cool. Didn't know
Yeah,
about that one, but
Just need to
definitely
see
sounds
Shell 12
interesting.
and turn on the preview features.
Mhm.
It's in a nice blog post by Catherine Dollard on the Microsoft blog.
Okay, very cool. Any more questions? Back there. No, we don't use Apache Kafka, and I don't have any much experience with Apache Kafka. We're more in the Azure cloud in more current project, so Event Hub, Service Bus, and stuff like that. No Kafka.
Have you tried the benchmarks with actually logging to the console or something? What are the times like that?
No, I haven't, and there's a very easy reason for that, because it vastly depends on the project and how you do logging. It's very hard to make them actually comparable to something, because we, for example, said we're already using OpenTelemetry, we're pushing them onto Loki, so we get it into Grafana. Some other people might use other project, Dynatrace, Datadog, whatever. Some people are still logging onto a file. You're depending on the hardware. They're more on the hardware than just the CPU there. So same thing with OpenTelemetry, goes over the network. So I didn't really test it out, because I'm not sure if you can actually really benchmark those things like in a comparable way.
So a follow-up on that. So the most speed up is generated by not logging at all.
Yeah, sure.
So the most speed up was the if statement.
Yeah.
Actually on the slides, like if you are not on the log level, because you would be in the milliseconds, and when you actually write to the wire or to the disk, and we are in nanoseconds when just logging in the memory. So basically the benchmark is just allocating memory or these string interpolations and stuff.
Yeah, this is really just testing the kind of logging framework Microsoft provides without logging anywhere. But yes, this was I saw, for example, in for tracing my application last week. We had a think about with OpenTelemetry from, I can't remember how much it was, like 3% was spent just with logging there. And this is already a high performance one. So yeah, definitely makes a difference. Yes.
What kind of what would you use if you were logging JSON objects, pretty medium to large ones?
Logging JSON objects, I would use the struct format which I showed before, most likely, because, well, it only serializes it as JSON if you actually log it, which is like a super huge improvement, of course, because if you're serializing it in your own way and then just putting in there as a string, you serialize it without even knowing if you actually log it. So that's definitely something I would to do. Depending on what you exactly want to do with the JSON object, if you want to make it filterable, of course. So if you really want to search for it, then I guess you would need a couple of extra steps to add those things as a property. I guess you would need to go a little bit out of the way on how like easy normal logging is done, but it's definitely possible. Yeah.
I saw this question on social media the other day about, and I was wondering to forward it to you. How would you include caller member name or caller member information via this caller member name attribute in your log messages in the most generic, but also in the most performant way?
Good question. I think you would be back to a custom interpolated string handler, and maybe just grab it and add it as a parameter, and then do high performance logging based on that. I'm really not sure, but maybe that could work. Not sure. I would need more thinking for that one. But excellent question. Yes.
More questions? we are waiting for the pizza. So when you ask more questions, the time flies faster. Yes.
Yeah. Have you ever done any like event sourcing type applications?
No, not really.
Neither have I. But I heard about it today, and I'm like thinking how to like make these high performance, like you store all the events in like this big like blockchain type that's
Yeah.
your data store, and then you like make some arbitrary way to sort of make views and stuff like that. But I guess it's just all. I guess it isn't really that much performance on the app. That's more kind of like your backend that does all the views and stuff like that.
No, unfortunately not. I'm only using like a little bit of general, like this benchmark.net in general, always to compare stuff when I see things like a couple of days ago, I had something where I could either use 3 times ends with, or I could use a regex, and I was interested like, okay, what of these two is more performant now? Turns out the regex is way more performant. Didn't believe it myself. So yeah, it just adds up if you use string operations all the time, for example. By the way, just remembering, I forgot 2 things about the benchmarking stuff. If you run benchmarks, always run them in release mode, not in debug, because only then you will get all the compile optimization, of course, and of course start them without attaching a debugger. It's not so much a problem in JetBrains Rider, but in Visual Studio, the start with debug button is very, very big there. But it will show you a warning like, do you really want to start with a debugger attached? And then you can abort and need to start again. Okay, if there are no more questions, and thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for listening to me, and thank you very much to the whole organization team. So Raul, Stefan, and Andreas is not here today. Thank you very much for the invitation. Julian.
Thank you, Christian. So at all of our speakers, we have a little present for you. Today, 2 little presents. We have one coaster left as our past speaker presents. You get one.
Thank you very much.
And our newest, for the next speakers, we have our very fancy speaker .NET sticker set. So today in Christmas edition, and all for, you get the whole set, and all people here in the audience get one sticker from me. I give you later. So thank you, and
thank you very much.
Enjoy
really
the poster.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. So and yeah, thank you for joining. We have our very nice stickers. Let's give you Christian one, and you can get also one. And today with Christmas edition, so very fancy in Christmas style. So we will also thank you our sponsors, T2Every, Rubicon, and JetBrains, and also thank you for TechTalk for hosting today the pizza, which hopefully arrived. The pizza web order shop was not with transactions, so I paid, but they didn't get the order. And so we have to wait a little bit on the pizza. So I make a call for this. And, you know, JetBrains refer, Stefan.
What the live audience can't see, but the internet can, is we start our fancy raffle tool. And we have 6 entries. And the winner is Real Argo.
Real Argo. So please contact us at team@netdevs.at, and you can choose one JetBrains license. So for the audience who wants a JetBrains license, okay, so we make a raffle with paper. I will go afterwards by the beer and will take your names, and then I will draw it. So last time we have only 1 or 2. That was very more easier to raffle in the audience. So that's the JetBrains reference. Thanks to JetBrains for sponsoring the licenses. So with every course, class, school, and talk, we want feedback. We need feedback to make our talks better. So please fill out our little form. I think it's about 4 or 5 questions. And yeah, that we can make our .NET better. And last, we see you at January 23rd with David Walser and Paul Roratzka about functional development in C#. So thank you. And yeah, thank you and see you later. And thanks for watching the last slide. And have a nice evening at online, remote, at home. And we enjoy beer and hopefully the pizza arrives very soon. So thank you and bye.